we need to factorize. So we need to factorize and find an expression in terms of p. P for pretty easy, I hope, for the difference between the roots of this equation. Okay, so factorizing, we need to use factorizing. We can't just plug it in our calculator because we have this extra variable or unknown constant p. And we need to show that the difference between these two roots or solutions that we get from factorizing, we're finding the roots of this equation and then finding the difference. So let's just distribute the power on this first term. So I haven't changed much. And we need to factorize. So remember, factorizing is getting two sets of brackets and finding what multiplies to get to the negative 12 and adds to get to the positive 4p. Now, it would be that simple if the coefficient of x squared was 1, but it's p squared. So what that means is instead of just x and x, we also need to consider the coefficient of the x, so that when we expand it out, we get p squared x squared. So we could have something like px and px, or we could have something like p squared x and x. In both situations, when we expand it, we will get p squared x squared. So let's just try this one, and if it doesn't work, we'll try the other one. So p squared x and x, and so two numbers that multiply to negative 12. So we could do 6 and negative 2. So let's do 6 and negative 2. And now let's expand to see if we get this middle term, 4px. So we get p squared x squared. That's looking good. We get p squared minus 2 times minus 2, so minus 2p squared x. We get plus 6 times x, which is plus 6, and then plus 6 times minus 2 is minus 12. So unfortunately, that is not 4px. Right? We have a p squared in one term and no p in another term. So that tells me we actually want a p in both terms so that we could combine them, which means instead of p squared x, we'll do px in both. All right, so we tried it, it didn't work, that's fine. You could do that in your head, but strongly recommend you just write it out so you have a history of what you tried. Now let's expand this out. So we get p squared x squared, that's good. Px times minus 2, minus 2px. 6 times px plus 6px, plus 6 times minus 2, minus 12. And that's looking good. So combining those middle two terms, we would get plus 4px, which is what we started with, which tells me that this factorized form is correct. We have correctly factorized it. And now the question is a little bit odd, right? It's asking us to find the difference between the roots. So we have the factorized form, so we can find the roots by setting each bracket to 0, right? Solving for x. So px plus 6 equals 0, or px minus 2 equals 0. Oh, that's not 0. So let's solve the first one together. So px equals minus 6. So subtracted 6 from both sides, and then divide both sides by p. Or we could, for this one, add 2 to both sides, and then divide both sides by p. Right, so we've solved for the roots, or the solutions, or the intercepts. But we're not done. We need to find the difference between them. So finding the difference between two numbers, let's take the larger positive number, so 2 over p, and subtract the smaller, in this case, the negative number, minus 6 over p. So when we subtract a negative, that becomes addition, so 2 over p plus 6 over p. Since they have the same denominator, we can just add the numerators, which becomes 8 over p. So that is the difference between the roots of p of x, or of this expression here, rather. All right, so p was pretty easy.